So that's my drawing, and I'll place my hand here just to show you the sense of scale. This is about 8 by 8 inches, and I chose to compose my elements as a circle. I just love circles. I mean, there's this that lovely idea of the circle of life, a circle of people coming together as we are. To embark on this lovely creative journey together. So there's just so many resonances with the idea of a circle. And then the fact that each of those elements are um, leading on to the next one, and there's no beginning and no end, which is also another reason, that I decided to name my membership Soothing Stitch Circle, because of this sense of people coming together as equals, as fellow artists, to come gather around and make art together. So I have drawn only a section of that circle to get us started. And I think that's a good approach rather than clutter with a lot of pieces. I've begun with a few, and then I'll keep adding as we go along, or depending on how the composition starts to come together, I may add or I may edit things out. So this is the thread that I'm going to be working with just to begin with. It's a cotton floss, DMC, and I've drawn out 2 strands. So two is generally my go-to, but depending on the kind of line and mark I'm after, I sometimes would then add more strands to it. I sometimes also embroider with just a single strand when I need something really delicate. So the first thing to do is to make a knot, and we'll make a tailor's knot. And the way you do that is place your end. So there are 2 ends here on your thread. The longer end, the longer tail, you place this on your index finger as if you were making the letter X, right? So let's do that. And then we want to wind this around a couple of times. 3 generally is what I go with, and then push this through. And you're still holding the coils of the thread in the pinch of your finger, and then you pull through. So that gives us a nice knot. This is called a quilter's knot. So we'll begin with this. And I'm going to get started with my ginkgo leaf. I love ginkgo. In Chinese tradition, it is a symbol of longevity. Even scientifically, it's proven that its DNA has remained unchanged for thousands of years that it's been around. So I'm getting started on the outer periphery of the leaf, and I'm using darning stitch, which is essentially a variation of running stitch, but the gaps between each stitch are minimal. So you're literally picking up 1 or 2 threads, and the floats of the running stitch are long. So I'm just going to do this very, very slowly as I move around. See, I'll bring this closer to the camera so you can see. It's literally 2 strands from my base fabric, and I'm going to pull this through. And when you put these down, you can make a judgment as to whether you are liking the stitch length in general, or does that feel good. If it doesn't, you can always try another kind of length, right? So I am just following my drawing, and I've reduced the length considerably here, because if I continue making the longer stitches that I did here, I will lose out on a lot of detail. So I am simply going to go around the leaf, picking up a few stitches at a time. There we go. And I'm just enjoying the process. I'm not worrying about accuracy too much. I'm not worrying about keeping the stitches uniform, although there's no harm in keeping them uniform. And I'm picking up 1 or 2 strands from my base fabric and carrying on. Just feels so calming, so simple. And just to get our momentum going, I suggest starting with your favorite stitch. So for me, it is running stitch. I love running stitch in all its variations, all its forms. It is one of the reasons that I felt drawn to Kantha in the beginning when I started making works in stitch. So the running stitch just felt so minimal, and I love the simplicity of it. You know, you can say so much with just this one stitch. Okay, so I've gone around and done my outline, and now I am going to embroider some of these veins. And once you get going, it just flows. Often we think that, you know, to make art, we need masses of time. We need like a whole afternoon off, or I will do it on the weekend. But actually, when we think about it, you know, from the time I started, I've probably done this like 10 minutes, not even. But already I feel that I'm starting to build momentum, and the way this is making me feel, I mean, those 10 minutes added to my day are so worthwhile, right? Instead of doom scrolling on Instagram, which I think all of us are guilty of, including me. Isn't it so much nicer to just be sitting with a needle and thread and continuing to embroider? And of course, the lovely thing about embroidery is that it is one of those things that you can do while sitting with your family, yeah, or sitting on the bus. So you would get a lot of interested glances, and you can do it whilst watching TV. So there's just such a lovely energy to it that it is it's just one of those forms of art making that allows itself to be so adaptable and portable. So what I'm doing is, in one of my strands has gone in, and I'm just trying to disengage it because I don't want 3 strands as my line. I still want to carry on with 2. So I'm just going to snip off the third one that had gotten stuck there. And you know what? The other thing I wanted to say was that don't worry too much about your first motif, okay? Think of it as your first pancake, which usually is the rubbish one, right? You usually end up throwing that out. So do not worry at all about how this is looking. Um, you know how musicians jam for a while before they actually get started with the concert? This is just that. We are warming up, and we are just getting going. And by the time we get to the third, fourth, fifth motif, this will be looking, you know, just the way our hands are moving, just the way our stitches are forming is going to look so very different. So trust me on this. Do not think of any kind of value judgments. Just go with the flow and allow yourself to enjoy the process. You will, trust me, by the end of this, you will find that there is no need of unraveling, of taking things off. We are not pursuing perfection here, because I personally think perfection is so boring. Isn't it lovely that, you know, your stitches are your own and like no one else's? That's the other thing I feel is so important to just say to ourselves as well. So I'm just moving my hoop back and forth. And apologies if this is making some of you dizzy. I am trying to keep my hand steady as much as possible, because I know I hate looking at things that are constantly shifting and moving. But I'm trying to make this also easy on my body instead of contorting myself at really odd angles. I'm just trying to go with what feels right, what feels comfortable. And I would invite you to do the same, you know, instead of holding the needle in a way which makes your hand feels tense. I'd invite you to hold it in a way that just feels easy, and forget about the convention of that it's got to be stitched away from yourself, or right to left or top to bottom. It just has to be stitched in a way that feels good. That's the only criteria in my book. So we have come to the end of this first motif, and I thought I'll take the opportunity to just show you how I finish off as well. So I'm going to flip the piece, and you'll see that actually it's just very, very little stitching on the reverse that is visible. So one of the easiest ways is to finish off using a knot that you make, holding the thread up like so, and then going around your thread so that it forms a big loop, and then just gently pulling your thread and guiding it with your finger or your needle so that it sits flush against the surface of your fabric. And I suggest doing this twice so that our knot remains robust and it doesn't come undone. So here we go. So that's our 2 knots, and I'm going to end with clipping the tail off. I'll probably clip this one off as well. And I want to bring this closer to you so you can see the knot is really small. And then we will look onto the other side, and that's our first motif done. And that made me feel really, really happy. And I look forward to seeing you for the next one.